what is so important about Above the Law is that it's the very first scene of his very first film sets up the Seagal mythos. It's literally a voiceover where he's explaining his own real life as Steven Seagal.
Hey guys, welcome to how Steven Seagal created a new film genre, the martial arts thriller. So this is part 2 of the series I'm doing called Make Steven Seagal Great Again. Once again, my guest is YouTuber Port Film Co-op. Make sure to check out his channel. I'll link it in the description below. And also make sure to check out part 1 of the series if you haven't seen it yet. Anyway, in part 2 of this series, we're going to do a really deep dive on Above the Law and talk about other Seagal related things as well. If you want to help make Seagal great again, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video, and let's continue this journey. Let me ask you this. I think the 4 biggest action stars of that era, in my opinion, obviously, it's no question Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I think Van Damme and Seagal make number 3 and 4. What do you think?
Oh, I think so, yes. Yes.
Now, of those 4, like, who is your favorite one?
Seagal.
Okay, well, Seagal, let's talk about that and why.
Here we go.
Well, prior to that, it was Van Damme. I really enjoy Van Damme. I think he has a very impressive body of work. But then I rewatched the Seagal pictures. And when I mean the Seagal pictures, I mean starting with Above the Law, right through to when he was blacklisted from Hollywood. So that period of time is so consistent. These films are fantastic, and I rewatched these films after years where Seagal had become a bit of a joke, mostly a joke on the internet.
Oh, joke? What, a joke? You think this is funny?
And I was just shocked how good these films were. I had seen them before, at least some of them, sure. But rewatching them, I was not just impressed by the films themselves, but I was impressed by him. I thought he is blowing me away with his performance as an actor, as a screen presence.
What does it take to change the essence of a man? I need time to change.
You know what's interesting, speaking of that, and he said in an interview that he's never taken an acting class. So what I've always found so fascinating about Steven Seagal is you got this guy who's basically almost middle-aged. I think he was probably 38, 39 when he shot Above the Law, or at least when it came out. Never done anything in film as far as like acting.
Looks like you won the Oscar tonight, Storm.
And then he gets his lead role in not some independent film. Like, this is a major studio, Warner Brothers. He's got great co-stars, like Sharon Stone played his wife, for example. So you just get this guy who's done nothing, never taken an acting class, and then he's the lead of a studio film.
Who the fuck is this cherry?
But he's so natural. That's the good thing about Seagal. Like, you could, criticize that he's very similar in a lot of his movies, but he's so natural, and that's the most important thing when it comes to acting, is just you don't look like you're acting.
What does this have to do with military intelligence?
In Above the Law, he absolutely knocks it out of the park, and that is what's so shocking about it. Because when you read that he hasn't even played a small character in a short film before, it is so real. And the person I would compare him to, and maybe they look a little bit similar, is Marlon Brando. Like, his performance reminds me of Marlon Brando. So it's so funny when people say he's not a good actor. It's like, are you kidding? He's so naturalistic.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe him.
Wow, look at you.
And that's what is important in a hero. As someone on screen that's playing a hero, is you have to believe them. And I believe Seagal 100%. And what is so important about Above the Law is that it's the very first scene of his very first film sets up the Seagal mythos. It's literally a voiceover where he's explaining his own real life as Steven Seagal, like as a person who discovers the martial arts and becomes a martial arts teacher.
When I was a little boy, my father took me to a baseball game. They had a martial arts demonstration out there, and I saw this little old Japanese man doing things that I thought were magical.
And then there's this sort of area where it's kind of blurs, the line between, fact and reality. And that is where the Seagal mythos is born. And I love the opening to Above the Law. I love that picture. It's a sort of paranoid thriller that's as good as the ones that were made in the 1970s, in the heyday of that genre.
You know what's interesting? So the opening of Above the Law, it almost comes across like a documentary because in a lot of ways it almost is. There are a lot of parallels there. I mean, they're using a lot of his history of moving to and living in Japan.
Developed a crazy dream to go to the Far East. And by the time I was 17, I was there, studying with the masters.
And he even speaks a little Japanese there, like fluently. People basically say, if you just speak on the phone with him, you just think he's a Japanese guy. Like he's got it down, the language down perfectly, which I guess makes sense since he's lived there so long and has a lot of respect for the culture, etc. But, and like you said, making the hero believable, which we talked about just how natural of an actor, but they set it off right out the gate where it's like, we believe him and we believe he can do the things in the movies because he does them and has done them in real life. And his technique is so fluid and smooth. And he is a true master. I don't know if he's like an 8th Dan or 7th Dan now. I think even when they shot that, in the late 80s, he was already like a 6th Dan in Aikido. And his brand is of Aikido, which I've done several videos on. It's not this flowery, watered down stuff. It's literally meant to be effective and meant to hurt people. And he showed that perfectly in the movies, in my opinion.
Mr. Police!
Yeah, it blurs the line between fact and reality. And here's another interesting aspect to it. It's that little piece of voiceover where he's explaining his life in that first sequence of Above the Law. As a voiceover.
We were always raised to be very patriotic, to love our country, and we did.
It sounds like it's on the phone. It sounds like it's recorded on a tape recorder. It doesn't sound like a normal voiceover, and that gives it this sense of intimacy or a sense of realism or as you say, documentary. And it's something I've only noticed in recent viewings of the film, because sound is a mysterious part of film. We always talk about visuals, but sound is the they can do things with sound that you don't even notice that is making you feel all sorts of things.
You're good.
And it's almost like he had just recorded that on a reel-to-reel tape and said, "This is going to be the intro of the film," or something like that. And it's the kind of thing he would do, because my understanding is he wrote that film, or he at least conceived the story of that film. He had been presented with 5 scripts from a studio executive that he was teaching Aikido, who obviously saw star appeal in Seagal. Seagal rejects those scripts and says, "I was a writer. I've got ideas. Let me share one of my ideas with you." And then they greenlight the project, and it's a massive hit.
And I'll tell you why. Superior attitude, superior state of mind.
You know what's interesting? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, go.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? So Seagal in an interview even said about Above the Law, like, this is not a martial arts film, which, it kind of is to some degree. But basically he said, this is essentially a true story based on what the CIA has done, right? With the drug trafficking.
You guys think you're soldiers? You're fucking barbarians!
And basically funding these covert operations. And they tie in like the whole, Iran-Contra affair, which it's interesting because obviously that story came to light. And we all know that, secretly we sold weapons to Iran to help fund these covert operations in Nicaragua to essentially the freedom fighters, which make them sound good, even though I guess they were considered terrorists in that country. But for us in our, U.S., they're the freedom fighters because they're fighting communism over there. But Seagal brought in the other aspect of the CIA's possible involvement in drug trafficking too, which is questionable. But the thing is, about 8 years after that film came out, I think in the San Jose Mercury News, I forget the guy's name, the reporter, but basically he shed light on that. Is like, yeah, they were actually, CIA was complicit in this drug trafficking too to help fund that operation. Funny enough, I think that reporter was murdered years later. Well, maybe not murder. I think they said it was suicide, because he shot himself twice in the head. However, that is possible. That reporter's name was Gary Webb, who wrote a series of 3 articles for the San Jose Mercury News in 1996 dubbed Dark Alliance. In his report, Webb claimed that the CIA was partly responsible for bringing crack cocaine to the United States in the 1980s. They would later make a movie tied to this called Kill the Messenger, starring Jeremy Renner. That's just some interesting history on basically what Seagal knew, or at least thought, that ended up, there's a lot of real things going on that he tied into Above the Law. It's very interesting.
You bring up some really good points. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that Seagal is a political dissident. And so from the first film, he's a political dissident. He is speaking truth to power. And it's really important because that's what's made him popular, but that was also what brought his downfall. There was one time on the Arsenio Hall show that he just casually says he believes that AIDS is man-made.
What is your theory about where it comes from?
Well, I wouldn't want to get too verbal about that because it wouldn't be good, but I think it's man-made.
Well, it wouldn't be good in what way?
I think it would not be good for me.
I remember that I actually told, you might have seen this guy on my channel recently, George S. Pogasic. I told him that, look that clip up. He's a big Steven Seagal fan. And knows a lot about Seagal, but I'm like, no, look up that Arsenio Hall clip. He talks about AIDS. It's like, how does he have this knowledge of all this stuff in general tied into, bigger world things?
You have some interesting viewpoints also about the AIDS crisis. Can we talk about that stuff on the air?
A little bit.
Okay. And when he says a little bit, he means a little bit.
Yeah, and some other things that make him a political dissident is that he's very much for people to have the right to bear arms, which is becoming more and more under threat in the United States. Seagal is a patriot. He is a nationalist. He believes in the nation state. He doesn't want all the countries to join together with one world government. He is an absolute patriot, an American patriot. He might now have a dual nationality with Russia, but he's absolutely pro-American and pro-liberty. So, someone online who's actually a professional musician, quite successful. His name's James Fox Higgins. He's also a political commentator, just a great guy. He sent me a message once because I was posting some stuff about Seagal quite a bit, and he goes, "Listen, man, what's with all this posting about Seagal? Isn't he a fraud?" And so obviously that's going to encourage me to respond. So I wrote him a few paragraphs of what I think of Seagal. And I just said, just go watch his films. And so that day he watched Above the Law. And then he posted positively about Seagal. And he said, "Steven Seagal fighting the deep state from day one."
That's interesting.
I don't know all of Seagal's politics. I can only get what he tells us and what he shows us through his work.
Sure.
But he wants to speak truth to power. And obviously there's a lot wrong with America, and he has his opinion on that. And the thing is, he could have taken the easy road. He could have just shut up about this stuff and played the game. And right now, he probably would have never left Hollywood. But he's not that guy.
I mean, it's not like I hate Hollywood as much as it's just I love honor, and I love people who can look me in the eye.
But going back to Above the Law, again, because it felt more documentary-like, and we did get a lot of history of Seagal that kind of blurred, reality with the fiction. But I was always under the impression that he was this Italian guy because he played one in Out for Justice. I think he even talked about his family moving maybe from Sicily, but I think he referenced somewhere in Italy, moving from there at the beginning of Above the Law. So I've always associated, oh, he's just this Italian guy. But, come to find out, he's born in Lansing, Michigan. And yeah, he's got a lot of Eastern European roots. I think he's even part Mongolian, or who knows, man. He needs to get like a 23andMe DNA test, I guess.
Seagal, my understanding is that his father was Jewish and his mother was Native American. But although in an interview he described his father as being a Russian Mongol, maybe it's a bit of both.
I think I even heard him in an interview even kind of just say, I don't know what I am. I think he kind of said that to some degree.
He played an Italian a few times. It just seems to be a good fit. He can pull off the accent. It kind of looks like he could be an Italian, and maybe that was just an easy marketable thing. Like Italians in American cinema they kind of have their
true,
area.
Because he also, let's not forget, he does kind of like to tie in the mafia, the mob in a lot of his movies, which ironically enough kind of parallels some stuff going on with his real life with Julius Nassau.
Oh yeah, that crazy stuff. Yeah.
His real life might be more interesting than his movies life. Like it's crazy everything he's involved with.
He's one of those guys you just don't quite know what you're getting. You can really drill deep into his psyche, and you don't know if you're going to get buried treasure or if your drill bit's just going to shatter into a 1,000 pieces. So out of all the guests that I met during the show, Steven Seagal was probably the most unique one of all.
I just think that it's important for young people to discover the early Seagal films, particularly if they want to form an opinion about Seagal. So they should watch his first 5 films. If they're not going to watch his first 5 films, at least watch his first film, and then come to me and tell me that's a bad film. But don't just say Seagal is terrible because you saw some straight-to-video film that he made in a year where he made 5 different movies, and he was only on set for 3 days in that film. That's not, you're not actually judging his serious work, because it's a fact that he was influential on cinema. He basically invented a new genre of martial arts thriller, and yet people don't know this.
Hey guys, that's going to do it for this episode. Make sure to check the next one. We're going to talk about the sincerity of Steven Seagal's work. You won't want to miss it, so make sure you're subscribed and you'll catch notification of it. Until then, I'll see you guys next time.